discussion again tonight. It's me, Scott Williamson, and tonight we're going to be talking to Joe Brad. How's it going, man?
Hi.
All right. Another person that I know for a few years on Fight on the Fence. And we had Patrick last night talk to me, and we kind of went over pantheism. And tonight we're going to be talking about like this mind body problem. Is the mind physical? What would you say, Brad, to that?
I would say is the mind of the physical,
Mm,
which is this picture right here
yep,
of the physical.
gotcha. So describe for me your worldview as far as the mind body situation.
It's more like a passive worldview. I don't. I believe that there's a lot of things that fall under the physical, such as like electricity, brain activity, internet, chemicals. But I can't seem to figure out how to put the mind of the physical. It could be an emergent property. It could be an abstract noun. But I can't. I could fit everything. I could fit everything I could think of under the physical, but I can't seem to do it with the mind.
It's like a different category altogether.
I can't figure it out. I've tried. I've tried to put the mind under the physical. See the mind?
Uh-huh.
I can't fit it under the physical.
So
And
tell our audience exactly like let's go down the list of these problems between, let's pick one. I think what you're talking about is this philosophical physicalism is what it is.
physicalism.
Physicalism. And so physicalism would say that the mind is a process that is emergent from a brain, a human brain or an animal brain or what have you. What is the first problem that comes to your mind when you think about that philosophy?
Is that the mind is indistinguishable in physicalism from not even existing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say the mind is of the physical, but at the same time, it's indistinguishable from not even existing.
What do you want in there?
Mm-hmm.
Shut.
So I guess if a physicalist might say, well, if you damage the brain, then it affects the consciousness, or if you take drugs, it's going to affect the way you perceive and are conscious. How do you explain that if the brain and consciousness are two different things?
That we are subject to we are minds, but we are subject to the physical, and let me see, we are subject to the physical, and we are interfaced. We're interfaced with the physical. So like I could say that a car and a driver are not the same thing, but the car pops a tire, the driver is going to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you believe that the mind is kind of like an interface to the physical world. So what came before, the mind, or did the physical come first for
Well,
that whole interaction to take place?
I don't actually know the answer, but I have this. I'm very open-minded to the idea that the mind is some sort of a eternal constant. That I don't know what causes the mind, but what I know that is that the mind exists. At least my mind does it. At least, and I cannot say that it's of the physical.
So how confident are you that it's not of the physical? If you had to say like between 0 and 100, where would you put your confidence?
Well, I'm here now to try to find answers. I'm only debating only to find answers. I can't seem to fit it under the physical. So far I've been doing this a long time. I'd say 90%.
90%. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because you seem really passionate about that topic because you're always, posting up something, a meme or a question or a subject that all relates to the same topic every single day. I see you do that. So I know that you're very interested in the topic, and I guess you like to hear what other people have to say. It seems like what most people say is that the brain is like, or the mind is some sort of emergent property of the brain. Like it's this physicalism is what most people kind of gravitate to. Why do you think most people um, are materialists and physicalists? Why do you think that's the case?
Why do I think so? I don't know why other people believe that physicalism or materialism is true, but what I do think is that they they enter into religion and they say religion or science, which one? So they go, well, I'm not religious, so I'm going to go science. Science is materialistic, so I'm going to believe science. And then they don't give it any further thought, but they're like going to defend it because they automatically think that science is the way to go. And I'm all for science, but the interpretation of materialism is just one way to go. You could be
Hmm.
you could be scientific and be a dualist as well, just as easy. But they think it's woo.
Yeah. Do you think it's impossible for materialism to be true?
I'm all open minded for materialism. I think materialism is a valid hypothesis or a valid model,
Why is
but
it valid? Why would you say materialism is valid as a model?
because I I don't know why it's valid actually, but I think it's up there with dualism. Uh, Either the mind is a byproduct or it's not. Is if the mind is a byproduct, then the materialism is true. If the mind is some sort of a constant, then dualism is true. I'm open to both. I started off with a bias. I said, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I used to be a conspiracy theorist. I was
Okay.
like, and I'd be like, I think the mind is eternal. I think materialism's, I think materialism is bad science. I think it's a hoax. But as I evolved, I thought that, you know what, maybe materialism's a good hypothesis, but it's not any better than dualism and soft dualism. I'm not saying that the mind and body, the mental and the physical are distinct, but I'm saying that I think we should keep the mental and the physical as distinct until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose of language. It's like we cipher everything and we define things by their opposites. So if you were to say, I'm conscious, you only know you're conscious because you also understand the concept of unconscious. So there's
Okay.
these two different categories that exist out here, consciousness and unconsciousness. And so we ask the question, what's more fundamental, consciousness or unconsciousness? As if the two things are separate. But the thing is, they're only separate because in our mind, we have conceived and imagined these sort of ideas. These ideas are just made up. They're imaginary. We
Okay.
create these sort of words and language for that thing, but reality is just one thing. There's just reality. So in reality, we have consciousness, we have unconsciousness. For me, there's no reason at that level, just off the face of it, to choose one over the other, to say
Okay.
that the fundamental of the universe is unconscious. I don't know that. Just because unconsciousness exists doesn't mean that it must be fundamental. But if I'm consistent, then I would say, how do I know the universe is conscious fundamentally? I don't know that. Just because consciousness exists in reality doesn't mean it's the fundamental thing of reality. It could be something altogether different that we don't even can't even imagine. Maybe something mind alike, or maybe something totally different that we haven't even imagined yet. We don't even have words for what the real structure of reality is. And so that's kind of where I am. I take a more humble, curious approach. Like, I don't really know the answer, but I'm really dying to find out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, me too. I started off with the bias. I was like, I was a conspiracy theorist. Materialism's a hoax. Uh, Consciousness is eternal. But now, as I debated on Facebook a lot, I learned to say, "Hey, I don't know the answer, but I'm open minded to this or that."
I think that, you said that you used to be a conspiracy theorist. So that sort of informed yourself about yourself. Like you could sit back and say, you know, let me kind of do this metacognition. Let me step above, let me transcend my thoughts right now and just look at my thoughts and look at my narrative of self and figure out why am I thinking this thing and that thing over that thing and this thing. And if you follow the track, if you really observe yourself, you can kind of learn what's really motivating your worldviews. And,
Oh
like
yeah.
I said, for me, I already know that it's my own bias and I have a lot of cognitive bias too. And that's why I really have worked hard for years to just kind of like detach from any sort of beliefs at all and just kind of be more about I'm just open and agnostic. Like I'm just comfortable saying I don't know. I'm agnostic. And if I do come to some kind of conclusion, it's tentative because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
just take
tentative.
that. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not anything special. Like I'm not that smart or anything. I just like talking about these things and I like just hearing what everybody's thoughts are on them and then challenging them with just basic questions just to kind of test where they're coming from and how they got to where they are. You know what I mean? So, with your form of consciousness theory, what would you call it again? You said you called it something dual,
Soft dualism or
soft,
passive.
passive dualism. Okay, can you explain that a little bit? What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So uh, I don't know if the mind is derived from the physical,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm saying we should hold out on believing that it is until
Mm-hmm.
until we know better. Like I think the mental and the physical are distinct.
Mm,
I don't think they're the same thing, but does one cause the other? I don't think we know yet. But let's just hold them as separate until we know better.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, and there has to be a reason though to think we should hold back. Like a lot of people feel very strongly that physicalism says it all. Now I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it myself, but there's a lot of people that think that, and I'm not talking about just your average Joe on the street. I'm talking about the consensus of neuroscientists in the fields of mind and everything like that would say that you know the mind is of the physical. Yeah, like that there's no dispute about like that. There's no controversy in it within that field of science. So like I just can only guess. I think the reason is because the correlations are so tight. Like and you're saying that the correlations are there because of an interface theory, like some sort of like our mind is the interface to the physical. Why do we have this interface to the physical to begin with? Do you have any answer for that or any thought
Uh,
about it?
no, but I do know that when I'm dreaming at night, sometimes I have some pretty vivid dreams, and
Hmm.
my mind is interfaced with that dream world. Like last night, for example, I was dreaming of the Navy. I was in the
Mm.
Navy. I was in the Navy. There was a ship. There was a whole bunch of Navy shit going on last night. But my mind was interfaced with that. But that environment didn't cause my mind.
Mm. Right. What could also cause your mind or unconscious processes, things you're not conscious of. Like,
Uh,
for example, take something very simple, like okay, you were born, would you say the 80s or the 90s or whenever you were born, whatever year, let's say 1915, you were born in 1915. Being born in 1915 um, predicated you being conscious of anything, as far as you know. So if you're saying the mind is fundamental, like, how does that work? Because this world was here before you were born.
oh,
and your
Yeah.
mind emerged out of nature. And so a lot of people would say that, well, the brain is a physical thing, and then from the physical thing, the consciousness evolves as well. That's why the thoughts and behaviors and language of a 3-year-old is different than somebody, that's an adult. It's because their brain has developed, through time, and their consciousness went along with the brain's develop. It's like, if it seems like if the brain was, or the mind was more fundamental, it seems like the mind would always be in one state where it wouldn't have to change at all. It would transcend the changes of a brain. I
Oh,
just
so
don't. Yeah,
so you're convinced that the world existed before you?
it seems that way. Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely
So,
seems that way, because if you use the same consciousness we're talking about, you can observe, the fossil record, strata,
oh yeah,
tree rings, um,
redshift.
photos, redshift, blue shift, all sorts of observations. And
Sure.
what makes these observations so compelling is because they were predicted beforehand.
Yeah.
Like when we look at cosmic background radiation
Yep.
and
The Big
redshift,
Bang.
the Big Bang, everybody thought, well, if this model is true, then we should find these set of things. And now we found all those things. We found gravitational waves, all of these things came out of the theory, out of the model, you know.
Yeah. So I agree that the redshift, the cosmic microwave background, indicate a Big Bang. So what I call this is Maya is the narrative of the environment we live in. So
Mm,
it's a narrative. So yeah, we do acknowledge that the Big Bang has evidence, but is that proof that it existed? So if I'm reading a book, I can read a book. There's a Big Bang that happened in the book. There's evolution. There's evidence for evolution. But all in all, it's just a narrative that my mind created for me to believe that I came from exploding out of nothing. So yeah, there is evidence, but is the mind still fundamental?
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is that if we have evidence that there is this long time, this
Deep
deep
time.
time,
Deep time.
and we according to this same model, we humans and animals and everything that has a brain or any sort of sentience came about because the universe had to exist first. First there has to be an oven before we can make a cake. Okay, it's like, um, so I'm just trying to figure out, how do you? Let's assume that the mind is fundamental. That's the truth. How are you closing that gap? Like, how are you fixing that gap right there?
Okay, so I don't have the answers to the universe. I don't have. I don't know if there's a God that's giving me a show, a physical show, a God that gave me a life. There's something beyond the physical. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is that I cannot fit. I cannot seem to figure out how the mind is an emergent property of the brain.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of mysteries that still remain about the world, and we're gonna find out, right? I think though that you would probably do well to listen to Donald Hoffman. Do you know who Donald Hoffman is?
I know a little bit about them.
Okay, Donald Hoffman, if you may know, he's a researcher into the nature of consciousness, and he also says that consciousness is fundamental. That's not just that's something he feels he has some evidence for.
I don't have
You know,
evidence for that.
basically, you want to check him out. I thought I would share the video to
I
present
love
it,
it. I would watch it.
and then yeah, we can look at it together and kind of make some observations, because it is kind of similar to what you're talking about, and maybe this would be a good starting point for you when you discuss this stuff with folks.
Can I tell you that I'm not against physicalism or materialism?
Yeah, you
I'm not.
did. I
I'm not
understand.
against
Yeah,
it.
right. So anyways, this was an interview on Lex Friedman show with Donald Hoffman, so we'll
Okay,
go
I'll
ahead.
watch it.
Well, let me say first what most of my colleagues say. 99% are, again, assuming that space-time is fundamental, particles in space-time, matter is fundamental, and most are reductionist. And so the standard approach to consciousness is to figure out what complicated systems of matter with the right functional properties could possibly lead to the emergence of consciousness. That's the general idea, right? So maybe you have to have neurons. Maybe only if you have neurons, but that might not be enough. They have to certain kinds of complexity in their organization and their dynamics, certain kind of network abilities, for example. So there are those who say, for example, that consciousness arises from orchestrated collapse of quantum states of microtubules in neurons. So this is Hameroff and Penrose have this kind of. So you start with something physical, a property of quantum states of neurons, of microtubules and neurons, and you say that somehow an orchestrated collapse of those is consciousness or conscious experiences. Or integrated information theory. Again, you start with something physical, and if it has the right kind of functional properties, it's something they call phi, with the right kind of integrated information, then you have consciousness. Or you can be a panpsychist, Philip Goff, for example, where you might say, well, in addition to the particles in space and time, those particles are not just matter, they also could have, say, a unit of consciousness. But once again, you're taking space and time and particles as fundamental, and you're adding a new property to them, say consciousness. And then you have to talk about how when a proton and a neutron, or a proton and electron get together to form hydrogen, then how those consciousnesses merge to or interact to create the consciousness of hydrogen and so forth. There's attention schema theory, which again is how neural network processes representing to the network itself its attentional processes. That could be consciousness. There's global workspace theory, and neuronal global workspace theory. So there's many theories of this type. What's common to all of them is they assume that space-time is fundamental. They assume that physical processes in space-time is fundamental. Panpsychism adds consciousness as an additional thing. It's almost dualist in that regard. And my attitude is, our best science is telling us that space-time is not fundamental. So why is that important here? Well, for centuries, deep thinkers thought of earth, air, fire, and water.
So Donald Hoffman is going to talk about how the best science tells us that, space-time was emergent. And so matter and everything that's derivative from space-time is not fundamental either, by definition. So what he's trying to show is that consciousness is that fundamental thing. And so space-time and all that comes out of consciousness somehow.
But I wouldn't argue that, because that's like a claim I can't prove.
Yeah.
I can't be an idealist.
Yeah. So you're more of a would you say you're a panpsychist?
A soft dualist, because there are people that say that matter emerges from mind. I can't prove that. I can't prove that. So I'd rather take a more passive approach and say, hey, matter and mind are separate, but I don't know anything else.
Oh, okay. So you just know that they're separate. You just don't know how. So you don't really know if consciousness is fundamental at all. Then you just know that the matter and the
mental and the physical are
distinct. Mental. They're just two distinct things. Yeah, there's the conceptual and the physical.
But I claim ignorance on everything about that. I don't know that the matter creates the mind. I don't know if the mind creates matter. I used to believe that I had the answer, but debating on Facebook, I learned that I actually don't know the answer, and I gotta be more tentative.
Okay, because when I look at your posts and I see your reactions, a lot of the times it's as though you're like saying the physicalism is a fallacy, and materialism just doesn't work, and you're really anti materialism and physicalism. So I always wonder, what is your? Are you really taking a definite position one way or the other? Or are you just trying to point out to them that there's problems within your worldview that you're not talking about? You're just trying to get me to believe this particular explanation.
Well, a lot of what I post is out of boredom. I post
Oh
from
yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah.
I post from
Right.
work.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
I have a lot of computer time at work.
Yeah.
But if I come off as dogmatic, I'm not dogmatic.
Yeah. It don't seem like that. It seems like everything you're saying is you're mainly just kind of agnostic, but you're willing to listen and be open to both sides. And me too. I'm the same way, brother. I'm like, I don't know. Um, it seems if you listen, when I listen to Donald Hoffman all day, I'd be like more on his side. If I listen to Philip Goff or to Anthony Tononi, I would probably be a panpsychist, because it's like all of these views are logical, and they have valid mathematics behind them and experiments and stuff, but I'm just not. That's just beyond my pay grade, man. I don't know how to distinguish all that well between the models.
I wrote a book. Um, this is all everything I post about is to build my book. And
Hmm.
do you see it?
Yeah, kind of.
It's kind of psychedelic in nature.
Yeah, I see that. Right.
So I feel like there's a sort of a psychedelic nature to the universe.
Oh, okay. Explain that, because I've taken DMT, and when I did DMT, I kind of experienced the world in a very psychedelic fashion, if you will.
Yeah, I'm scared to do it again right now, but what it does to my stomach, I like what it does for my brain, but I don't like what it does for my stomach. I get really
What,
nervous.
DMT?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but I feel like the Bardo is something that nobody talks about, and the Bardo is the realms we see. I've only seen it a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like we're seeing something that is actually there.
Mm. And
That
where do you see this?
during mystical states.
Okay. And
So
so you think we're seeing a real physical object?
I'm saying that we see a physical.
Oh,
What we're seeing is valid. It's not
you
hallucination.
see a
Uh,
physical reality.
sort of an animated one, a psychedelic reality.
Okay, so how do you tell the difference between a psychedelic reality and a delusion? How do you tell the difference between those things?
I would say they're the same thing. It is a delusion. I think
Okay,
we're all delusional right now, and I think a delusion is a natural state of our minds. We're
I
always
kind of
delusional.
agree. I
We're
kind of
always
agree with that. Mm-hmm. Yep.
we're always delusional, and
We're not really seeing reality as it. We're only seeing reality as it presents itself to us because of the way we ingest and process information. So yeah, I agree with you.
okay. So I think
But
that
there are
we
normal states and there are abnormal states. And what you're saying is that under the psychedelic influence, you have one of these abnormal states of consciousness. Is it any more real than the delusion we live in every day?
I can't say, but I think that when we die, so a lot of my posts are about death. Ultimately, they're about death. What happens when we die? And you know how you stand up too quick and you sort of see stars. You stand up too quick.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I feel like I wonder if when we die we don't see those stars the same way, and we go into these Bardo. I want to know what happens when we die. Do you know what happens when we die?
Well, I've researched a lot about the topic, and I think we can say that for a lot of people, after one um, goes through clinical death, there is, at least for a short period of time, for what they could measure, a form of conscious experience, which was very, it's been validated through stories, through, you know, people's, stories about what they experience. But having said that, it's compelling because the similarities of the stories, the different facets are always the same. They No one physicalist or material natural theory can actually explain every one of the experiences inherent with the near death experience. So something happens to your brain, and I guess it could be because consciousness may in some ways be like bioelectricity. And so when your brain dies, it's kind of like a hard drive. You know how your hard drive, the light goes out after you turn it off, your computer, you turn it off, your computer goes, your battery dims slowly. And so the experience of your brain changes throughout it's almost like there are different portals open up for you that you can experience reality within that portal. And they're always the same, which is very suspicious. Like, why is it always the same? Is it orchestrated that way? Did someone program it that way? Like, are we in some kind of simulation theory, or is this just a typical biological manifestation of what happens when your brain dies? Is this just what everybody's going to go through because that's just what the brain decides to do at that point in time in that extreme situation? But either way, either theory, for me, doesn't matter, because you gotta focus on what the experience is. You get a life review. um you're talking to supposed dead loved ones or whatever the case is, or thing, and it's almost like you face some of your big questions in life, like that you experience in life. It's really, that seems to be the common thing. And so for me, just even if that was just the last thing my brain wanted to generate, that in itself kind of motivates me to want to live a good life.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I don't want my last moments to be memories of things I regret doing. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want that. And so that's what I think happens after death, is that for a short time, you're going to go through a life review. You're going to go through talking to dead loved ones that you lost along the way. And you're just going to face a lot of things that maybe you missed during life somehow. And that's what it's going to be. So live a good life now. Don't, try to make that last experience, if such a thing really happens, and it seems like it most likely does according to everyone else.
Well, I'm not trying to prove an afterlife, but I'm saying that I'm more than open-minded towards it.
Yeah, sure. Who
I
wouldn't
can't
be?
sit. I can't claim to have all the knowledge, but before I got into all this, I thought that you die, you die. But now I'm a lot more open-minded to maybe that's not the case. But
I mean, it
even though
may
I
or
don't
may
know,
not. For me, just to put it out there, I don't really care about it like I did maybe at one point in my life when I was very religious. I don't really care about that question anymore, because I
well,
don't
that's
care
good
about,
though.
and the reason why is because if you really meditate on where were you before you were born? If
I
you
don't
really try
remember.
to think about that and meditate on it and visualize it and understand it, you'll kind of embrace it. And then that affects the way you think about death, because the same way you don't remember any experience, any sort of history or construction of yourself before a certain point in your lifespan, just lets you know right there that when you die, it's okay. You're just going to let go of it all.
Yeah,
And the best thing is just to try to have as many good experiences now, because you can waste a lot of time worried about the experiences you're going to have in the afterlife, because you already know you're ignoring them now. You know,
But the good thing for me though, I'm at work, so I had nothing else to do.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know, but I mean, I'm just saying, if these things are on your mind at all, at any degree, to where you're thinking about it, you're posting it, you're writing books about it, you're
you're
talking
taking away
to
from me
me
now.
about it, on YouTube and everywhere else, then it's obviously means that it's important to you. And which is cool. Like, it's important to, I think, really everybody, if they're honest about it. But some of us have finally concluded that, you know what, there may not be anything after this life. So I better get on with the life now and make the most of it and have those heavenly experiences now before it's too late. And then make every moment in the future, love yourself. You also exist tomorrow, right? So you've got
Yeah,
a plan to make your life better for tomorrow and for your family and for everything like that. So those are the things I focus on now rather than worried about what's going to happen when I die. I just put all that energy into focusing on the here and now. Does that make sense?
and that's very positive.
Yeah, I try to be, because people say that if you don't believe in an afterlife, you'd be nihilistic and depressed and all of that. And it's like, to me, it had the opposite effect.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it has the opposite effect. It makes you more positive and more livable. You want to live today, and you want
yeah.
to make the most out of life, and you want to treat people really well, and you want to treat yourself very well, because this is the only life you have, and this is what you're going to leave, for your children and for people that know you. Is that
Hmm.
you want to shine who you really are while you're here. That's like a religion in itself, but it's just minus the gods and the afterlives and all that. But to each his own. I always say, to each his own. If afterlife is something that you know you want to discover and try to find out, why not? That's incredible.
Well, you could be a
Because
philosopher, or you could not be a philosopher. It's up to
yeah,
you.
it's up to you.
If
That's
philosophy
right.
is, if
These
philosophy interests you, then go ahead. I
Yeah,
mean,
these questions are cool. These questions are great, and that's why we're all part of the same debate group. We like talking about it.
I can't say that I'll be on Facebook forever. I'm
Yeah.
I'm almost done with it actually.
Mm.
My main thing was this,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm pretty much done with it now, and I gotta find something else to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
some Facebook
understand.
groups about funny stuff,
Yeah, something totally switch gears. Yeah, I hear you,
like
man.
funny things. You know Javier?
Uh huh.
You know Javier group? It's funny shit. Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
funny stuff. I like
funny
the
stuff.
dark, sarcastic humor page, the
Yeah.
dark memes, and
I think philosophy should be a phase you go through, but I don't think you should be on it for the rest of your life.
I don't really like philosophy as much as I may carry on about it. Like, it's I like to discuss it as a layperson, just as something to ponder, because I mean, it's the deeper like, if you want to be shallow, but if you want to like dig deeper into things, then dig deeper in things, and it just depends on how we're wired up. But for me, I'm just not that deep um philosophical type of person, because I don't I'm more like just your common sense everyday person.
Okay. Yeah,
You know what I'm
philosophy.
saying?
I think for me, philosophy is a phase, but it's such a juicy topic that it ended up being a phase for quite a long time. But I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, gotcha. And what do you want to move on to? You said humor and stuff like that.
My daughter, my family.
Oh, just getting more into the family. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Don't let that miss pass you by, because we can worry so much about philosophy and where consciousness comes from, and all cool topics, all really cool, man. But nothing's nothing can replace, your family and your loved ones, and the behavior and actions you show towards your loved ones.
yeah. So who's watching
Definitely,
the show
man.
right now?
Don't know. Probably a lot of people. At the end of the day, they'll probably all click on it later on.
Oh,
But sometimes people are watching and they don't show up on my counter because they're not you know, YouTubers or anything like that, possibly.
Okay.
But anyways, man, I'm gonna let you go. I think we exhausted this conversation, but it was a good one. I'm glad we talked about it and got it out there, man. We got to know you a lot better, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, you have a good night, man. I appreciate you.
Will you send me the link to the video?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to you right now.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, buddy. You too, man.
All right, bye.
Bye.